Hey race fans, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Simon, and in today's video we'll be looking at how to live stream your races using OBS Studio. We'll sort through the detailed configuration in the app so we can optimize your streams for your PC hardware, and we'll also talk through how you can take recordings and screenshots in iRacing using OBS. This video is part of a larger series on the channel dedicated to optimizing your iRacing experience, so check back regularly for more setup guides. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, what is OBS and why should you use it to stream your races? Well, it's an open source streaming and recording software for your PC. It's free to use, it's regularly updated, and has generally set the standard for live streaming over the last decade or so. If you are new to streaming, some of the detailed settings can be a bit daunting, and we'll talk you through those later in the video, but if you're willing to spend a few hours getting familiar with everything and setting up the profiles you need, it's a great app to work with. So to get started, we're going to head to obsproject.com. And here you see the website for OBS Studio. Now, assuming you're running iRacing on Windows, then you can hit the Windows here and you can see that it supports both Windows 10 and Windows 11. So you can go ahead, click that, and it will pull down OBS Studio for you. But what I also want to show you is going into the Help tab on the top right here. When I first used OBS, probably 4 or 5 months ago, something I found extremely useful was this help portal, in particular the initial guides and help, which can help you get familiar with some of the settings that might seem a little bit alien if you haven't used OBS before. So if we hit guides and help, you can see there's an FAQ section, a getting started section, a troubleshooting guide. Great place to start is the getting started section, and then most of these tend to be a really good read depending on how much you want to read up before you kind of jump in, but certainly the quick start guide, I'd recommend taking your time, having a read through this, following some of the instructions, as we won't cover all of these today when we run through our video, just to help get the app set up, running, functioning properly on your PC, but also giving you a little bit of background as to how the app functions and what some of the initial settings are to get you ready. Okay, you have OBS Studio up and running on your PC. Let's take a look at the initial configuration you need to make before you can get ready to stream your first race. First of all, you'll see that there's this profile drop-down menu. Now, because I'm recording, it is blacked out at the moment, but for you, you'll be able to hit profile and select new. And I recommend doing this because you can create different profiles for whether you're streaming or recording, and it will save you all your settings under a single profile. So this can be super useful. For example, I have one profile for streaming and I have one profile for recording. So go ahead and get that set up before moving on, as it's super useful. Once you've done that, you can head into File and then Settings, and we're going to talk through all of the different settings that you need to get ready before you can stream that first race. First one would be in the Stream section. So here you need to select what streaming service you want to connect OBS Studio to. Now for me, I connect to YouTube for all of my live streams, so you'd select that as the drop down, and then there's 2 ways to connect OBS Studio to YouTube and indeed to Twitch and the others. The first would be to connect your account directly, which is the way that I recommend, because once you've connected your account, then OBS Studio can talk to YouTube and you don't have to set it up every time you're creating a new stream. However, if you did want to do that, you could just use Stream Key, and as it says advanced, you need to be able to find your individual stream key for your particular stream on YouTube or Twitch, bring that across into OBS Studio, but bear in mind that's something you would have to do every time you wanted to live stream. And as I said, I much prefer the connect account method. Makes it much simpler if you're going to do multiple streams every week or every month. Next thing, you would jump into the Output tab, and there's a number of tabs within here: streaming, recording, audio, and replay buffer. We're going to take a look at streaming. First of all, make sure that output mode is set to advanced in the drop down at the top. Often it is set to standard initially or basic. So we're set to advanced here. The streaming settings, now because I'm recording, again, these are blanked out for me, but you need to select the correct video encoder. This is super important because you'll be faced with a number of options. Usually you're going to want to select the encoder, which is on your GPU hardware. So for me, I use an NVIDIA 4090, so I'm using an NVIDIA encoder. Just make sure you make the right selection depending on whether you're streaming in HDR and whether you're using an AMD or an NVIDIA graphics card. If you select an encoder that doesn't use your GPU, it will use your CPU, which will have a hugely detrimental impact for your game whilst you're streaming. So absolutely essential here to select your GPU encoder and not the standard CPU encoder. Once you've done that, we want to take a look at the encoder settings. A lot of these are set the right way when we jump in, which is great. Rate control should be set to CBR. Now your bit rate here, this will most likely be too low. Again, bit rates can vary wildly. The higher the bit rate, the better the quality, but also the more strain and work it'll put on your internet connection. Now I happen to know that for my bit rate I need it to be around 20,000 because I stream in 1440p and in HDR, so I would change this to 20,000 for my stream. But I'll add a link in the description below which will provide some guidance around bit rates depending on the resolution you're running and depending on whether you're running SDR or HDR color. If we head down a little bit further, the preset P5 slow good quality, this should be the default and is absolutely fine for high quality streams. You don't need to make any adjustments to this if it's already set to good quality, so I would leave that as it is. And the same for tuning and multipass mode and the rest of the settings on this tab. The standard ones that OBS provides should be good to go. Now the recording tab, we won't do anything with this as this current section in the video is focused on streaming, but we'll come back to this tab later as this is where you configure the recording settings if you are recording videos using OBS and not streaming on that particular occasion. Heading over to the audio tab, this is important. The audio bitrate for track 1, which will be the main track that OBS is recording, by default it's at 160, so we like to bump that up to the maximum of 320, so you're getting the maximum audio fidelity for all of your streams. And then replay buffer, this is usually fine to leave as standard, so I won't be going into this one. Now heading over to audio, this is another important tab. Just make sure that your desktop audio and your mic auxiliary audio are selected to the specific speakers that you're using. So for me, this is my headset, the Logitech Pro X, for both speakers and microphone, but always make sure you've got this set up correctly. Otherwise, when you're streaming, if these are disabled or not selected correctly to your primary headset, microphone and speakers, then of course no one will hear you on your stream. Jumping into the video tab, again, because I'm recording, I can't edit those in here. But what we need to make sure is set correctly is that the base resolution is the resolution of the monitor that you're streaming from. So for me, my center monitor is 2560 by 1440. So that's great. I don't need to make any changes there. Now the scaled resolution, I like my streams to be scaled in the same resolution that I record from. So these are the same. However, people can upscale the resolution here if you want to, but that can lead to a bit of a loss in visual fidelity, or you can downscale as well if you like. It's really personal preference. Do some searching on Google if you're not sure what works for you, but typically having the base and the output resolution as the same is the best way to have a really crisp picture when you're streaming. Common SPS values at the bottom For iRacing and for any games in general, I recommend setting this to 60. The standard in this box is most likely going to be 30 in OBS, but 60 frames per second for fast moving games like racing will just make the stream that little bit smoother for your viewers, and I think that makes quite a big difference. Finally, the Advanced tab. Unless you are streaming in HDR, I recommend leaving these settings as they are. However, if you do have a HDR monitor and you're looking to stream HDR through YouTube or one of the other services, just make sure you come in here and set up the video section correctly. For me, the color format needs to be P010. The color space needs to be adjusted to this REC 2100 PQ, and the color range needs to be full. If I don't make these changes when I'm streaming, then the HDR quality won't make it through into the stream. If you know you're also going to use OBS Studio for recording some of your replays from your races as well as live streaming, it makes sense to create a separate profile within OBS to do that. So you can head to profile. It's grayed out for me because I'm recording at the moment, but you can click profile, click new, and then create a separate profile so that all of the settings that we're about to adjust will be saved just within that recording profile. Once you've done that, hit file, hit settings, and then we'll talk through the key ones for recording. First of all, we don't need to worry about stream in this profile because we're just going to use it to take recordings. So we can jump straight into the output tab. We can ignore the streaming tab and jump straight into recording. First of all, make sure the output mode is set to advanced. Most likely it will be set to simple or basic for you when you first open it. So jump that to advanced. And then let's talk through some of these initial recording settings that you can see on the screen. Recording path, simply where you want your recordings to be saved, so adjust that to whatever makes sense for you. Recording format, this is important. The standard format in OBS is to a file format called MKV. Now, whilst this is good for making re-edits to recording, as the information is stored in a way that makes editing the file much easier, compatibility-wise, it's a little bit more challenging for the different streaming sites or video services that you might be using. So I adjust this and change it to MPEG-4, and I find that the file sizes are the same, the recording takes the same time, and the advantages of having high compatibility make it worth making that switch away from NKV. The video encoder, just like for streaming, this is a really important selection. Make sure that it is selected to your GPU encoder. I'm running an NVIDIA 1490, so it is set to my NVIDIA hardware encoder. If this is selected to the CPU encoder, it is okay from a recording perspective because you are not racing at the same time, but the GPU encoders are far more efficient these days, so always better to have this selected as a GPU hardware encoder. Audio encoder should be the same, and the rest of these settings that you can see here, you should be able to leave as the default values. Now, if we head down to encoder settings, a couple of things to check. Make sure the rate control is set to CBR. Make sure that the bit rate is appropriate for your screen resolution and whether you're recording in SDR or HDR. Now, for me, this is set to 45,000 currently because I occasionally record in 4K, and this would be the adequate bit rate for that. If you are recording in 1440p, 20,000 would be fine here. And if you're recording in 1080p, then an even lower value will be okay. I'll put a link in the description to a guide around bitrate values so you can see what makes sense for your screen resolution and color settings as you do your recording. Now, the presets here, the standard is most likely going to be P5, but you can adjust this to P7 slowest so you get the best quality. Because we're just recording and we're not racing at the same time, you can afford this to push to the best quality and it won't have a negative impact on the recording. Everything else in this screen you should be able to leave as the standard, but you can take a quick double check of what I have here just to make sure that it looks the same for you. We go to the audio tab. Same as when we're doing live streaming, make sure that the audio bitrate is set to 320 so you get the maximum audio fidelity, and then no need to worry about the replay buffer. Standard values there will be just fine. Flipping over to the audio tab, again, as important for recording as it is for streaming, make sure that your desktop audio and that your mic audio are set to your primary speakers and microphone. For me, this is my Logitech Pro X headset. If these are not selected, when you start your recording, you won't be recording yourself through the microphone, and the desktop audio also won't come through if you have some desktop music playing in the background as part of your recording. On the video tab, I can't make these adjustments just because I'm recording a video at the moment, but for you, as we're streaming, make sure that your base resolution is set to the resolution of your monitor. So for me, 2560 by 1440, and then the output resolution, if you want to scale it up or down, this is where you would make that adjustment, but I keep my output resolution exactly the same so that there's no upward or downward scaling when I'm recording. The common SPS values, typically this will be set to 30. For a recording, honestly, this can be set to 30 or 60, but if you are doing a recording of a replay from gameplay and iRacing, I recommend setting it to 60, as that's going to make it the smoothest for your recording when your viewers are watching it online. And finally, in the Advanced tab, if you are not running in SDR and you're running HDR as part of your recording, you'll need to come in here and make some adjustments to this video section. So if you are running in HDR, you have a HDR monitor and that's the color that you want your recordings to be done in. You'll need to select P010 as the color format. You'll need to adjust the color space to REC.2100 and also make sure that the color range is set to full. But if you are just running in standard SDR, the standard values that you see here will be absolutely fine for you. Once you've got your profile saved for recording, streaming, or both, there's three other areas of OBS Studio that we want to take a look at. The first will be this sources section in the middle here. The second will be scenes, and the third is going to be audio mixer. But we're going to start with the sources first. Now think of the sources as all of the different screen elements that you can bring into OBS during your stream or during your recording so that your viewers can see multiple screen elements at the same time. It's super easy to do. You head into sources, you hit the plus add source button at the bottom, and then you have a range of different sources that you can pull in. Could be a window capture, could be a video capture device like a webcam, could be simple text, media source, image slideshow, direct game capture, a display capture, and many other elements. So super customizable, and it's really, really easy to use. Now for us, I'm going to show you just a simple window capture here. So I would click that, create new. You could rename this to whatever you want. We'll leave it as the default. And then I have a Microsoft Edge window open on the right hand side monitor, which you can't see currently, but that's what we're going to bring into the OBS recording. So now you'll be able to see it on the screen. You can resize it as I've just done there. You can move it around the screen if you so choose to. You could even pull it off to the side of the screen if you want to. So super easy to do. And then let's say you wanted to have this screen element, but you wanted to just pause it for the time being and hide it during a recording or a live stream, where you could come down to sources here, hit this I button, and then it will hide it instantly. So super easy. And then if you want to bring it back, you just click that again, and then it brings it back into view. So super easy to do, and you can do that for any of the sources that you have selected. I'm just going to remove that from our list of sources. I'll show you another one that I currently have hidden, my S1 Racing logo. So I can hit the I button and it will reappear. If for any reason I wanted to adjust that source rather than delete and re-add it, I could select it, hit properties, come in here and make any adjustments. This is a simple image file, so my only option really here is to browse for a different image file if I wanted to update that. Super easy. And then if we head down to webcam, this is usually an important one once you've added it and you've got it set up, just to double check the properties, because there's a number of areas to customize here. First of all, making sure that the right webcam or camera device is selected. So for me, it's my Logitech Brio. But then down to the resolution, SPS type, video format, color space. A lot of times you're going to want to set this to custom to make sure you're getting the right resolution and the right FPS for the recording or live stream that you're doing. Now for me, I record in the highest resolution that I can, so that is 4096 by 2160. I record in the highest FPS that the Brio will take, so I have that selected. And then the color space I have for the Brio, because it can record in HDR, I have this set to REC 2100 PQ because it is a HDR color space, so it's important to make that adjustment. So every webcam will be different. There will be different settings in there that are important for you, but just make sure you have a look through those settings for your particular webcam so you're getting the maximum quality that your webcam can deliver. Let's take a quick look at scenes and then audio mixer in this next step. What's great about scenes is scenes are a collection of sources. So when you're starting a live stream, you might not want to have all of your main sources currently visible at the same time. You might want to have a prep screen. And equally, when you're finishing a live stream, you might want to have a post-show scene, rather than just closing out the webcast and ending your stream abruptly. So this is a really easy way to collect some sources together so that you have different configurations depending on where you're at in your stream, and you can even assign hotkeys so it's super easy to adjust from one scene to another. So right now you're looking at my main live stream, but if I was to jump us over to my pre-show screen, this is something that I use when I'm live streaming. So when I get my live stream up and running, this is the screen that viewers will see initially, just so I can make sure that the stream is up and running correctly, that OBS is running fine, before I then switch over to my full live. So YouTube is picking up the stream live, but all users are seeing right now is this one image, as well as any audio that I have selected. So when I look at sources here, you'll see it's a different list to when I'm in live. I have my S1 Racing image file, and this is just simply a static image file which I have covering the whole screen. And then I also have an audio file which is currently muted for this video, but when I'm actually doing a live stream I have this playing, and it has some background music that's playing at the same time as this image, so that if users are logged in, they can tell that the stream is live and that we're just getting ready to go live. Then I would typically jump into live, and then we would see another set of sources here, what you've been seeing in the video so far, which is the webcam on my center screen. But then say at the end of a live stream, you want to bring it to a close in kind of a nice fashion. I have something that's very similar. Again, a static image file. This one says thanks for watching. Again, I have the audio file which you can't hear playing, but that will be in the background, and that just gives me a minute to make sure I can close the stream out correctly. And especially if you want to add watermarks at the end of a video or the end of a live stream like YouTube does, then this gives you an easy final screen in order to add those watermarks once your video is uploaded to that service. Okay, so onto Audio Mixer just to close out here. Audio Mixer is super simple. Any of the sources that you've added, some of them will have audio properties. You can see here I've got desktop audio, my mic audio, and my webcam audio, which are all coming from my sources column, which is great. You'll also notice that the desktop audio currently is muted, my mic audio is unmuted, and my webcam audio is muted. What's super important is making sure that the right audio is unmuted, especially from a mic perspective, so that when you're live streaming, you know that your audience can hear you correctly. You can tell that from a microphone or from a speaker perspective if sound is being picked up, because you'll see movement in the lines here. As you can see, as I'm speaking, the mic line has some movement, but because I don't have any audio playing through the desktop, there is no movement there in the lines. But if I was playing music in the background, then you would see that. Even though it's set to mute currently, it would just be grey and the bars would be moving up and down. But if you unmuted it, then you know that would then play through to your audience live at the same time. The levels can also be important. So you'll notice that my desktop audio is probably about 3/4 of the way up this slider compared to my mic. This is purely through trial and error. I did some trial recordings before I did my first live stream to try and get the balance right. I figured that I'd want my mic to be as loud as it could be in OBS, but if I had my desktop audio also loud, then actually that was starting to drown out some of my commentary that I was doing during my live races. So adjust this to what works for you. It will be slightly different for everyone's PC setup, but doing some practice runs during either a practice live stream or a practice recording can help get you to where this needs to be. Now, the final thing to think about quickly is when you're in different scenes, you may have different audio sources listed here, and you may want different ones muted or unmuted. So in my pre-show, I would have my mic muted because I may be setting up some other things, but my desktop audio would likely be unmuted, as I could be playing some music in the background to my audience. And so what's really important is when you're switching from one scene to another, just make sure you also make the adjustments around what's muted or unmuted in this audio mixer section. At this stage, you're ready to create your first broadcast and go live. So let's walk through those steps. First of all, double check the profile that you have selected in OBS is the one connected to your streaming service. If not, then you won't see this Manage Broadcast button in the bottom right, so just double check that before continuing. Once you're ready to go, hit Manage Broadcast, and then let's hit Create New Broadcast, and this allows us to create some basic settings about the stream. So we'll give this a title, and we will just call this simply Test. I'm going to delete this description I had from a previous live stream. Now, the privacy, normally you would have this set to public because of course you want your streaming provider to notify your subscribers that you're going live. Because this is a test, I'm going to select unlisted. And then there'll be a bunch of other settings to configure, whether it's YouTube or Twitch for your particular stream. Here, YouTube is asking me for the category, whether the video is made for kids, whether I want to add a thumbnail. So make those adjustments for your particular stream. But a couple of ones just to watch out for before we hit schedule broadcast will be latency. Make sure this is set to low. For high FPS games, this is important, and iRacing, typically you'll be running in a fairly high FPS, probably 60 frames per second for a live stream. Make sure Enable DVR is ticked, and then when it comes to schedule for later or not, I'm going to do a schedule for later for now. You don't have to. If you're ready to go live immediately, you could untick this. But the great thing about schedule for later is you are able to select a time and a date for when you want the stream to go live. And what that does is it creates an element on your streaming service so that all of your subscribers can see when you have a stream coming up. So super useful. We'll just leave this set to the default here, and then we'll hit schedule broadcast. What this is doing is talking to YouTube and then creating that broadcast element on the YouTube site. So event created successfully, so we're good to go. But at this point, we're not live and we're not streaming, but we have that broadcast now ready to go. So when you're then ready to go live, you go back into Manage Broadcast. But this time we want to hit Select Existing Broadcast. You can see I've got a number in here. Let's select Test, which is the one that we've just created, and then we'll hit Select Broadcast and start streaming. Now, because I'm recording at the moment, I can't actually live stream at the same time, so I'm going to talk you through what you would see at this stage. You would actually see here a button that says Go Live. Key thing to bear in mind is until you hit go live, you are not live in your streaming service. So make sure you hit go live when you're ready to go. The way you can tell everything is functioning properly on your stream is in this bottom toolbar at the bottom here. If we start on the right, CPU, if that usage is extremely high, it may suggest you've got an issue with your stream or with your PC. For me, the CPU usage is almost always below 5% when I'm live streaming, which is pretty standard if you're using a hardware encoder to do your streaming. You should have a live counter, and that should be ticking over from the start of your stream. So if that counter is not moving, again, suggests there's an issue with your stream. And then something that you can't see here, but when you are live streaming will be visible for you, are the number of dropped frames. And if the number of dropped frames is higher than 0, it could be suggesting you've got a PC overwork issue or potentially a network issue. And what that means is your audience is going to be seeing a choppy stream. So something to keep an eye on. You might just need to reset your router. It could be as simple as that, or it could be something to do with your CPU performance. So let's quickly talk about the hotkeys that are available in OBS Studio. Super simple piece of functionality, but it's really useful when you're live streaming or recording, as it enables you to map any hotkey to just about any functionality that you might need while streaming or recording. So instead of having to use the mouse to navigate, to click something whilst you're on screen, you can simply hit a hotkey to change a screen, to mute an output, whatever it is you need. And it's very easy to set up in OBS Studio. So to do that, you hit File, Settings, and then you click the Hotkeys tab. First thing to bear in mind is these hotkeys will be saved per OBS profile. So if you make some assignments within your streaming profile, just know that they're not automatically carried over into any of your other profiles that you might have set up. Here are some of the ones you can see I've set up. So I don't have too many in this particular profile. I do have one for screenshot output and then switch the scene a little bit lower down. But some of the examples that you could add would be a start and stop streaming hotkey, a start and stop recording hotkey, and as I said, just about any piece of functionality you can imagine you might need, most likely you'll find it in the hotkey list. Now, something else that I really like is it will show you your different scenes in the hotkeys. So I only have one scene set up in what I'm recording on currently, which is called my live scene. But what you'll notice here is there's an opportunity to switch to scene by pressing a particular hotkey. So I have this set to F1, but also for all of your sources, you can select hotkeys to show and hide each one of them, which can be great if you're live streaming and you want to show a source but potentially hide a source later. You can set hotkeys for all of them, and instead of having to navigate into OBS and use the mouse to switch the source on and off, you can simply use hotkeys or a Stream Deck to do this for you, which is super easy and something that I really enjoy. And the same for audio. Here I've got my desktop audio, my microphone, and my webcam audio. If you want a hotkey to be set to mute or unmute any of these, just as easy to do. You can see here for my mic, I've got a F5 set to mute and unmute my mic. So it's a really great piece of functionality. It's easy to miss, but when you're getting into live streaming and you're getting more confident with it, this is a great way to improve the professionalism of it by mapping hotkeys so that you don't have to be moving the mouse and making adjustments to OBS, potentially on screen where others can see it. So worth taking a look. A couple of other pieces of functionality that I personally use OBS Studio for when I'm using iRacing that might not be obvious. For recording or taking clips from replay files, I tend to use OBS over the inbuilt iRacing video exporter. I just find it a little bit easier and more familiar to use. It's just like taking any other recording. You would load up an iRacing replay, you would get that playing on whichever screen you're going to record from. Make sure that your audio mixer is set correctly, so therefore it's set to desktop audio. Probably you'd want your microphone muted unless you're providing some commentary library over the top of that, and then you would just hit start recording as you would with any other recording that you're doing using OBS. I like to use it. I find it a little bit simpler and more intuitive than using the inbuilt iRacing functionality, but really either works just fine. The other is screenshots. Again, iRacing has an inbuilt functionality to pull screenshots out of iRacing, which works just fine. The reason that I use OBS Studio to take my screenshots is because I run HDR monitors, and the inbuilt iRacing screenshot, or indeed any other program on Windows, provides me a heavily overexposed screenshot when I pull photos out of iRacing if I have HDR on, which is a bit of a shame. Now, I could get around this by just taking my screenshots in SDR and turning SDR off on Windows, but I like the effect of HDR when I'm racing, and I don't want to go through the hassle of switching it on and off when I'm making those adjustments. So for me, I open up a replay file, I get it to the point, adjust the cameras, all the normal things that you would do, hide the UI using the spacebar in iRacing, and then I fire up OBS Studio, set a hotkey to take a screenshot, that's important, and then simply hit that hotkey, take a look at whether I like the photo, adjust the replay file, take others. Super easy to do. It'll place the screenshot in your normal video output folder that you've already specified. And again, something I use might not be important for you, especially if you're not running in HDR, but something to consider. A really useful piece of functionality within OBS Studio, but perhaps lesser known about, is the ability to convert previously recorded video files from one format over to another. The most common example would be to convert a previous MKV video file over to a more compatible MP4 file. Earlier in the video, I said that when you record video in OBS, you can adjust the output file, which is great. But if you've got a previously recorded video, which is in MKV, and you need to switch it over to MP4, no need to download any additional software or to re-record the video. OBS can do that for you in a matter of seconds. It's super easy. The way you do that, you hit File, Remux Recordings, you'd select the recording that you want to change from MKV or indeed any video format over to MP4. You'd select it from wherever it is on your PC. Then that would then show up as the target file being an MP4 file, and then you would simply hit Remux at the bottom, and it's super fast. Really useful piece of functionality if you previously created a video file but you need to switch it to MP4 for compatibility. So absolutely worth taking a look as you get to know OBS Studio a little bit more. And before we close, let's talk briefly about OBS Studio's ability to import and export both profiles as well as scene collections. I recently rebuilt my PC and didn't want to have to recreate all of the settings and profiles and scenes that I previously set up in OBS Studio, and I was really pleased to see that the import and export functionality is extremely powerful, very simple to use, and it's as simple as exporting all of your existing profiles and scene collections to a file, saving them, and then just importing them right back in once you've reinstalled OBS on a fresh machine. So super easy. The place to do that, I'll show you in the scene collection. You can see here there's new, duplicate, rename, remove, but import and export are the two that you would need. So I'm currently in my screen scene collection. So if I hit export, then I would just be able to save that wherever I would like, and then import would be just as simple. You'd hit scene collection, hit import, and then you would just search for wherever that collection path is. Now I can't show you it on profile just because I'm live recording currently, but it's exactly the same functionality. You have both import and export. So the key thing to remember is if you are ever doing a fresh PC build, just make sure you export all of your profiles and all of your scene collections to somewhere that you'll have access to post your build, and then when you have OBS up and running again, just import them right back, and then it will be as if the program is exactly the same as you've left it. So super simple. Okay, that's going to be all for this one. As you explore OBS further and get beyond some of the functionality that we've looked at today, don't forget there's a couple of great places that you can go for help. First of all will be the OBS website. We can take a look at the forums as well as their online help guides. And secondly is the OBS Discord, where you can connect with other OBS users and enthusiasts and get some real-time solutions to any of the issues that you're facing. Check back on the channel for additional setup guides over the coming months, and if there's one that you don't see and you'd like us to produce, just let us know in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the grid.